And now I invite Amanda Gallbeck to come forward to light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is found in your order of service.
Okay, I'm a rookie at this, so wish me luck. I light this chalice with these words: open our eyes to see what is beautiful, open our minds to learn what is true, open our hearts to love one another. Success. Okay, so please join me in the affirmation of covenant, which you will find printed in your order of service, saying, "Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other."
The connection of one human heart to another across space and time, made possible by the earlier heart's capacity to make room for the later hearts, to offer a frame for understanding without insisting on the transient particularities of its era and place, is equally the essence of wisdom and spiritual growth, and of culture and its hope to endure. Home is the great enduring symbol of that connection. Within the home is family, by birth or choice, a web of meant to be nurturing relationships, more or less tangled, whose loving potential we do our imperfect best to realize. And it is the relationship between that symbol and our lived experience that I will focus on this morning. But I want to shift our focus from home and family to the household. A household is a home viewed from the outside, as from the perspective of the Census Bureau or the IRS or an economist, where we see not the hearth, but the chimney. It is a home considered as a social institution with distinct culturally prescribed roles and expectations, always shaped by present trends in a particular time and place, and always evolving. Our experience of the specific configuration of our own household and the cultural expectations placed on it colors our understanding of home and family. And it is of our time. Social roles and expectations of households are not now what they used to be. During the 19th century, technological advances unsettled former understandings of households' social roles and responsibilities. People adapted or reasserted older agrarian notions of the household as they tried to make sense of the rapid changes that came with the rise of industry. The most revealing examples appear in rationales for industrial agriculture, that is, the plantation system, before the Civil War, and applications of science thereafter. Of old, a household was understood as a productive unit in the economy, more like a business than a consumer. And it was a political unit. Before the 19th century, a household usually became self-sustaining and productive by acquiring land, since agriculture was by far the largest economic sector. A notion of citizenship accompanied those material conditions that I like to call household polity. Frederick Ross, a Presbyterian minister in his day, a religious liberal, more or less defined it, arguing that inalienable rights adhered not to individuals but to families. Writing in 1857, he asserted mankind is only the congeries of families. A congeries, it is worth noting, is a disorderly collection, a jumble. But in that jumble, the basic unit is the family, not the individual. This idea underlay the legal restriction of voting to property owners. Ross also said that a family is governed by rules and subordination. What did he mean? Well, Ross's book was titled Slavery Ordained of God. 6 years earlier, the Alabama Baptist State Convention published a collection called Duties of Masters to Servants, 3 premium essays, featuring the winners of their essay contest on that theme. One of the winning authors was 27-year-old Holland Nimmons McTire, a Methodist minister in New Orleans. His essay elaborated a Bible-based household hierarchy that I think is probably what Ross had in mind. McTire wrote, "The word master and its correlative, servant, express a peculiar relation, one that cannot be expressed by neighbor any more than by husband and wife, or parent and child. These are all different relations and imply distinct obligations as they do distinct facts. The exhortations and instructions of the New Testament addressed to various classes and conditions may be reduced to something like the following order. Duties of Christians as neighbors and members of society, as husbands and wives, as parents and children, as masters and servants. I think what he is doing there is placing the household into a hierarchy of social relationships. The top rank is relationships between households, or families, as Ross put it. Within the household, subordinate to relationships with neighbors, are first the marital relationship. Remember that the marriage ceremony is a public witness to the creation of a new household in the neighborhood, deemed to sanction that new household. And then the parental relationship, and finally, and the lowest in rank, the relationship of master and servant, which is the economic aspect of the household. If you have hired help, or upon a day you might have had indentured or enslaved servants, that's a household relationship distinct from family, but still in the household. If you were a master craftsman, you might take on an apprentice whose status would have been like that of an adopted child. That's the sense of Ross's reference to rules and subordination. And within those rules, a wife's role in the household was often akin to manager and supervisor in a business organization. As industrial development accelerated in the decades after Ross and McTire wrote, new scientific insights and standards of efficiency and skill were increasingly applied to work within households. The academic field of home economics had roots in this other side of the Industrial Revolution. As early as 1823, Catherine Beecher founded Hartford Female Seminary to prepare young women for a wife's position as domestic head of household. "Educate a woman," she wrote, "and the interests of a whole family are secured." We might substitute household there for family. In her 1841 book, A Treatise on Domestic Economy, she covered a range of topics, including calisthenics, time management, manners, charitable giving, both human and architectural circulatory systems, and, tellingly, servant management. In her day, a household was as much a business as a home. In the boom years following the Civil War, a young white woman named Ellen Swallow read in Godey's Lady's Book about a new college for women called Vassar. A child of well-educated parents who schooled her at home, she saved up money from her teacher's salary, supplemented it with a scholarship, passed the entrance exam, and joined the hundred of thousands of women who competed to be admitted in 1868. She earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1870 and went on to independent study at the Institute of Technology in Boston, now MIT. Graduating in 1872 with a second bachelor's degree at MIT, and then at the same time receiving a master's degree from Vassar. She married an MIT professor 2 years later, invited back to Vassar in 1879. Now Ellen Swallow Richards gave a lecture titled Chemistry in Relation to Household Economy. Her message was that as scientific discoveries transformed industry, the home had not kept pace. Toward the end of her career, she founded and was the first president of the American Home Economics Association. It's worth noting that her career coincided with that of Frederick Winslow Taylor, the famous advocate of time and motion studies and scientific management. Richards did similar studies and concluded that vacuuming was better than sweeping. But what drove her in that direction was her belief that women's labor was just as important to the economy as men's. In those same years, a young black woman named Margaret Murray developed similar convictions. Born during the Civil War, she was schooled and raised after her father died when she was 7 by white Quaker missionaries who came south to Mississippi. They encouraged her to teach, sent her to Fisk College in Nashville, where she wrote for the school newspaper edited by W.E.B. Du Bois. She graduated in 1889. At her graduation dinner, she met Booker T. Washington, who hired her to teach English at the Tuskegee Institute. Soon she was made Lady Principal. Today her title would be Dean of Women. She married Washington in 1892. Later she headed domestic science education at Tuskegee and led community homemaking education off campus on Saturdays when countrywomen came to town to shop. For her, home economics education was integral to her husband's program of uplift. All of this that I've been talking about underscores 19th century America's shared understanding of a household's economic importance. A further indication is that domestic science programs were a feature of education reform during the post-Civil War boom years. Land-grant colleges and HBCUs that were founded then typically offered courses in domestic science. Hampton Institute, an HBCU in Virginia, opened in 1868, was the first, And by 1874, Iowa State, Kansas State, and the University of Illinois all had programs. By the time Tuskegee opened in 1881, it was an established academic field. The land-grant colleges were federally funded by the Morrill Act of 1862 with the goal of establishing at least one college per state to improve farming through research and education. Their leaders of those land-grant colleges, when promoting domestic science, said that everyone with farming experience knew that wives and daughters played a crucial role in agriculture. That argument was lent weight by the common cultural association of households with farming, even though they were increasingly urban. While opponents at elite schools smeared such education as menial, and leading black figures like W.B. Du Bois bristled at manual education, which to them smacked of slavery, the notion of science helping households to catch up to industry was persuasive, and it was an essentially conservative notion. Conserving the household as a traditional institution, traditionally understood as a productive economic unit. The conservative role of science shows in higher relief from another angle. These same post-Civil War years saw a search for a scientific rationale for laws that prohibited non-heterosexual behaviors, as religious rationales began to lose cultural authority. First in Germany in the late 1860s and later in England and America, political movements formed to extinguish such laws. By the 1880s, scientists of medicine and psychology had developed the label homosexuality and pronounced such behavior a psychopathology. It took a century to dislodge that diagnosis from accepted medical practice. Home economics, meanwhile, merely withered. By the 1950s, following wartime progress for women, World War II, home economists were teaching women how to stay home. In the 1980s, home economics was no longer a respected field. I remember that Cornell University had renamed their program the School of Human Ecology. In 1994, Ellen Richards' American Home Economics Association was renamed the American Association of Family and Consumer Services. The notion of a household as a productive economic unit is lost now. Economists no longer speak of it as an economic or social institution. Instead, they talk about an abstract aggregate of consumers. During the pandemic, we were reminded that we could be productive at home, and we're given new tools to do it, some of which work better for me than others on some days. While the household might again become a common site for economically productive work, the division of labor and interdependence of today's industrial economy have removed it to the periphery of economic activity. It is a cost to us rather than a source and generator of income. Home and family, economically speaking, are a burden. They have lost the institutional support they once enjoyed as a household. The 1950s American dream, the house with the picket fence, is a vestige, a shadow of that institution. We all feel that dislocation, though we may not have named it or thought about it this way. We feel also the liberation this extraordinary economic revolution has brought. And collectively, we seem to find our liberation confusing. We're having trouble understanding each other, caring about each other, sharing the wealth, and being at peace. So what do we do about it? 3 things. Be charitable. Be self-disciplined. Be compassionate. For the connection of one human heart to another is the essence of wisdom and spiritual growth and of culture and its hope to endure. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen.
I invite our chalice lighter, Amanda, back up to extinguish our chalice. Please join us in saying, you don't have to sing this part, our closing words, which are found in your order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.
And may your charitable, disciplined, compassionate heart hold space for peace.